So a milliner is a hat maker, somebody who makes like headwear. I grew up with parents who were very much like do-it-yourselfers. We always, if you could make it, you did, and you didn't buy it. At an early age, I just really got into clothes and fashion. So that's kind of how like my need to make things manifested. And I think it's more relevant now, especially living in Brooklyn. Hats are definitely making a comeback. So it's a cool way to be able to make something that's handmade, but still very relevant in the fashion industry. And I think it's something that when somebody finds the right hat for them, it becomes kind of like that pair of jeans that they never want to wash. It's like it becomes them. That's just what I love about it. It's like a statement. New York City is like ahead of the world in fashion and street fashion. And everyone has there's so many different personalities and so many different kinds of people here that there really is a market. New York has a really amazing younger community of people that come here really believing that they can just do what they want, and if you can, that's the beauty of it. Especially having a borough like Brooklyn where you can have young people coming together, people supporting each other. I don't know if that exists anywhere else. Yeah, I think that maybe only in New York is this really happening.
Eventually went to college at SUNY Purchase for 4 years, graduated, BFA in dance, and now I am in the world of New York as a Broadway actor. And I kind of fell into Broadway because my first professional audition was for a Broadway show. Didn't know anything about auditioning for Broadway, didn't know anything about, the whole scene, so I went and booked my first job, and just so happened to be a Broadway show. And so from there, I've just been doing show after show after show. I've gotten so into the business that I forget that this is a big deal. Broadway is a big deal. People are in school their entire lives trying to get to where I am now. Here I am, 4 Broadway shows in, and sometimes you don't even think about it, and then you wake up one day, you're like, wow, I've really accomplished a lot. This is quite the experience I've been having thus far in New York City, having to not even been able to graduate. When I booked Fela, I hadn't even graduated from college yet, so it was kind of an awesome thing that I'm doing here. It's a big deal. Here I am in New York City, city of dreams and all this stuff, and I'm on Broadway. I like stylized dancing. Of course, I have my movement quality as a choreographer, and that's separate, but as far as me as a dancer, I enjoy stylized dancing. That just cool, I can wear a 3-piece suit and I can give you full ballet technique and all this kind of crazy stuff, a drag and a turn, jump off a box, do a hitch kick, and then smile at the end of it as if I didn't do anything, Just cool, just that cool style of dancing is always my favorite. And that to me is a beautiful thing to experience in theater, Well, as a kid, I've always known New York to be the place to be, It's where everybody comes to live their dreams in theater or in film or in movies, And New York has always had that hype, So I decided to go to school in New York because my school was outside of the city, but still, I was close to New York to whereas I could get to some kind of goal of fame and fortune, But yeah, New York is that place. New York is that place. It may be crowded, it may be busy, but New York is that place, the mecca of mostly everything.
So I took a photography class as an elective in high school, and then I really liked it, and I thought it was something that I could do, and I continued to do, graphic design and different art classes in high school. So that's when I really got into it, and I did a lot of photography on my own and doing a lot of projects and self-portraits and stuff. I guess my favorite thing to take pictures of is people. Any kind of portrait is, I think whenever there's a person in the frame, it just becomes immediately way more interesting to look at, and just to understand, because it brings in this new kind of energy that you just can't capture when you're doing still lives and stuff, or landscapes. I mean, I do landscapes too, but I definitely like humans in pictures. New York is just this cultural, artistic mecca, I think. And, you know, I think it's probably the greatest city in the world. So it's always been my home. I've always lived in it or close to it. So it's just very relatable to me. But at the same time, there's a market here and there's a lot of people working, like-minded people that are working, which does make it harder because, you know, there are so many artists here. Like, it is a little bit convoluted, but it doesn't mean that, you know, you can't find your place, and it's a good place to push yourself, I think. Like, it's a really good place that you can find yourself and like understand yourself as an artist and as a person.
We're all fighting inner battles, hurting emotions like cattle's, fighting against society's waves with broken paddles. And this idea of us versus them has turned into I versus me. That's until I began to see that who I am could be determined by no prophecy. Cause free is a word not understood by a herd that is lured by the promise of the falsely cured. And I have not deterred from this idea that I've stirred, cause to know inner treason is to know the reason of war. So I started to write some of my poetry down on my Instagram, and eventually people started saying, hey, I really like, you know, what you're writing. It's kind of like slam poetry. Have you ever performed it? And I said, no, I haven't, but maybe I will. So I started to read it out loud a little bit here and there, and it started to sound pretty good. The words flowed and, you know, the rhythm was good. So I actually started going to a few open mic nights. And I really found that it was a great release of stress, and it was a way to find myself because I've always had trouble speaking in public to people. And I think that self-expression is probably the most important thing for someone to be able to achieve in their life. A lot of times we bottle up our feelings and, you know, our emotions, and we kind of let the negativity sit there and dwell, or even sometimes the good that we're feeling, we let it sit there and dwell, and it doesn't actually become anything. I think that when you start to talk about something, it becomes a real thing in this world. So that's why spoken word is so powerful, because you're actually taking these ideas and these feelings you have in your body and your mind and your soul, and you're putting it out there to the world. So my name's Salvatore Di Benedetto, and I am a food photographer and spoken word artist in New York City. I'm from Long Island, Hauppauge, out in Suffolk County. I've been in New York City as a photographer since I got my iPhone the day that I moved here. So I guess that kind of means since the beginning. It actually began when I was working as a waiter in a restaurant, and the chef, whose name is Chris Scott, he makes beautiful food, just hands down art on a plate. So I started taking pictures of it. So at that point I realized I was onto something, and I was pretty excited about it. So essentially, I'll eat at a restaurant about 2 to 3 times before I approach them to become one of my clients. If I, after 2 to 3 times of eating there, feel confident in their food and their service and their company culture, then what I do is I'll reach out and say, hey, these are the services I offer, from food photography to building creative social media campaigns, and I would love to take on your restaurant because I believe in your brand. I would say that I don't consider myself a food critic. For me, if I enjoy a meal, I'm going to write about it and I'm going to take photos of it. If I don't like a meal, at the end of the day, I don't want to hurt any restaurant's reputation. It's not my job. So food photography obviously can get a little complicated when you're bringing in big cameras and lighting systems, but I think that when it comes to this age of like Instagram food photography, the most important thing is probably A, having natural lighting, and B, making sure that your aesthetics are good. Because it's not even so much about the food that's on the plate, but what's surrounding it. Right now, the food photography is doing great, you know, building creative campaigns, it's going awesome. It's something that I truly enjoy, and it's something that I'm passionate about. So I think that to be able to take something that you're really passionate about and that you love, and be able to turn that into a career, and something that, you know, not even just a career, but something that's innovative and that's growing in this world and changing the way that we view food. To be able to be a part of that is amazing, and you know, I thank God every day that I'm able to do that for a living.
Church was a big thing in my family, and that's where I started singing. And theater and acting really didn't come into play until I was about 15 years old. And that's basically where it started for me, was acting in high school. And I had a buddy by the name of Ryan Hurst. You might have seen him on Sons of Anarchy. He played Opie. He went to Santa Monica High, and he brought his managers to one of my shows, and that's how I ended up getting my first manager, agent, and got into the acting industry. So that's really how it happened. I wouldn't even say that it was something that I saw coming. I wanted to be in the NBA. I wanted to be a police officer, just different things. But acting was never one of those things. But that's how it led me here to New York. Well, my first professional role was Simba in The Lion King. And I started playing that when I was 24 years old, and I did it for like 4 years. I've grown so much because different shows, or every show that I've been a part of, has stretched me artistically. Because my body of work has been drastically different, from The Lion King to a show like Hair, to a show like Godspell, and now I'm working on Les Mis. I think the role of Angelos has always been seen as like this heroic figure because he's the leader of this revolution, right? So one of the things that I wanted to try to do was to find the humanity in the character, where, if I could find moments in his story that the audience could really feel like he really is just a leader by example. But he's had a revelation that, it's time for justice for these people. I remember one of the moments in a show that sticks out to me to this day is the final moment in the revival of Hair. It's an image of a soldier, Claude in the story, laying on an American flag because he's died in the war, in the war that he so passionately wanted to be a part of in the story. And that was always one image that haunted me. But moments that I've been a part of, definitely the walk up Pride Rock in The Lion King at the end of the show when Simba walks up. American Idiot was a fantastic, memorable production, and I played this role where I got to come out in my underwear, and it was just, one of those memorable moments that the audience, they gasp, they laugh. It's just little stuff like that you never forget. You need time sometimes to just get away, from the norm of, getting off the train, coming into the theater, get off the train, come to the theater. And it doesn't take much for us to just, go someplace just to have a different, a change of scenery, since we spend so much time in the theater. Central Park is a wonderful place, if I really just need, an escape from the hustle and bustle of like Times Square. We sit literally right in the middle, or right off the beaten path of Times Square, and sometimes it can get, a bit much because there's so many tourists that come to New York, and I mean, rightfully so. It's just always something about New York that keeps an artist awake, if you will. It's just, it has so much culture in New York. And people often forget that Manhattan is sitting on an island, but yet it feels so big. New York has grown on me so much. I've learned so much that it's actually one of the greatest places I've ever been. You're never gonna find, passionate people like you will in New York. The way that I've always seen these opportunities that I've been given are just a blessing to be able to give it to someone else. I run into so many young people that want to be here in New York, to be just a part of the artistic scene, that are in college. And one of the things that I say, because I never graduated from college, I went straight from community college when I was 21, 22 into acting professionally. But the one thing I'll say is, you have to love the art in yourself and not yourself in the art. There's something in each and every one of us that the world needs. If we can buy into that belief, and if we can really believe that, there's really nothing that we can't do, And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a part of New York, is that New York affords people those opportunities to let their art come out. So it's good to be a part of that.